The phone rings at 10:14, a time that looks undecided on the clock. My daughter's name lights the screen. I don't let it ring twice. Her voice is trying to be brave with a paper-thin shell. "Dad? Can we meet this afternoon?" She doesn't say where, so I say here, because the house knows how to hold things. There's a soft delay on the line, the kind that suggests she's picking words from a moving belt. "Okay," she says. 2:00. After the call, the kitchen listens to me breathe. I take the good china down from the top shelf, the plates we only set out when life insists on wearing a tie. The cabinet door makes its old hush, as if I've asked it for discretion. I rinse each plate though they're already clean, and the water runs warm over porcelain that remembers anniversaries, and one Thanksgiving nobody mentions. I lay them on the table with the careful distance my wife used to leave between plates, room for elbows and mercy. I shouldn't iron a tablecloth for a conversation I'm not ready to hear, but I do. The iron sends up a polite steam, the fabric goes smooth, and my hands have something to do that isn't dialing back. I place 2 glasses and fill a pitcher halfway, because full feels like promise, and I am not promising yet. The lemon in the crisper is tired but willing. I cut it thin. The knife has the nick I made in June, and I let my thumb find it like a worry stone. I sweep the crumbs no one left, straighten a chair nobody moved, fold a napkin she likes, corner to corner, press, turn. Habit is a way of keeping the roof on. Outside, the oak rubs the siding with its familiar apology. I check the clock and the clock declines to be helpful. Time has a way of putting its hands in its pockets when you need it to point. I try coffee and it tastes like homework. I try the radio and turn it off when the first cheerful song walks into the room as if it owns the place. I move through the house, the slow inventory of a man pretending calm until calm decides to be true. The bathroom mirror returns a face that knows how to build a framed square even when the lumber arrives warped. "Steady," I say, and the man in the glass agrees by not arguing. At 1:58, I stand at the sink and rinse the 2 glasses again because water is the one good lie. It says here, "Let me help." Her car door shuts in the driveway with a sound my chest recognizes. She comes up the walk too quickly, shoulders high, like a runner leaning at the tape. When she steps inside, she takes in the plates, the lemon, the cloth gone smooth as a held breath. "Dad," she says, and the word lands on the table between us like something that needs a seat. I pour water. The slices float like small moons, and neither of us reaches for them. She sits. I sit. The house tightens its belt a notch and waits. I don't ask the question that would shove her story out of her mouth. I let the quiet make room, the way you leave space so glue can cure. When she starts, the first syllable is barely there. Then the sentence finds its legs and crosses the room. I keep my eyes on her and my hands flat on linen, and the good china shines as if it remembers why people save their best for the hardest meals. She doesn't circle the runway. She lands. "I saw them," she says, and the word saw carries more weight than it should for 3 letters. "At La Paloma, near his office." Not once. Her fingers knot the napkin into something that will never be flat again. Twice. I ask which them, as if there might be a kinder version. She looks at me like I'm still her father, which means she tells me the worst. Her husband. My son-in-law. With my wife. Hands that forgot which rings they wore. Mouths with no business knowing each other. Plans whispered into the soft part of afternoon, where good people usually talk about errands. The lemon slices in the water stutter against the glass when I set the pitcher down. She keeps going because stopping would let the silence win. "Coffee cups," she says, that lasted longer than coffee. His thumb on her wrist, while the server pretended the table was just a table. They left separately the first time, together the second, his hand low on her back the way a man guides someone who isn't lost. I nod the way you nod at a forecast you've already felt in your bones. Chance of rain. Chance of ruin. She watches my face like it might be a weather map. "I wasn't looking for it," she says. "I was just there." The napkin twists again. "I thought maybe I was making it up." Then she wore a new perfume at dinner. I smelled it on his shirt that night. I picture the restaurant, the soft, practiced music, the framed black and white photographs of people pretending time is a gentleman. I picture the way my wife laughs when she's running late, the way my son-in-law leans on door frames like doors owe him thanks. It is amazing what fits in a single room. She tells me about messages, not content but cadence, the way a phone lights up at hours that used to belong to sleep. About a locked screen that wasn't locked before. About the kind of smiles that try too hard to look ordinary. I thought it was stress, she says, and the word breaks in her mouth. I thought it was me. It isn't you, I say, because sometimes the only nail worth driving is the obvious one. My voice does not move above the table. It stays low, lays down boards. Steady. True. She breathes like someone who's been allowed to put down a bag. There is a sound the heart makes when it drops and does not quite hit the floor. You can hear it if the house is quiet enough. The oak scrapes the siding and calls it wind. I call it telling the truth. She looks at my hands. What are you going to do? Listen, I say, and surprise crosses her face as if I'd announced a miracle. And then think. It feels almost brave, not leaping to fire when water is what the room needs. I pour more and the slices lift, faithful moons. I ask small questions. What did she wear? Which table? Who saw? The facts lay themselves out like boards on sawhorses, and I check them for warp. I'm sorry, she says suddenly, as if she were the one who broke something. I shake my head. She reaches across and her fingers find my knuckles, old hands and young hands meeting over the line, where a family either splits or holds. You don't have to protect me, I tell her. You just have to tell me the weather. She nods. Outside, the sky keeps its face, undecided and honest. Inside, we do the same. The kitchen window gives back a man who looks like he's been told to be brave by a mirror. I try on a smile, and adjust it the way you adjust a picture that keeps hanging a degree off level. Too much teeth reads as performance. Too little looks like a crack. I find a middle that remembers birthdays and forgets funerals. Hold it. Breathe. Let it go. Try again. I take out the Dutch oven because heft helps. Her favorite is simple if you let it be. Chicken with fennel, lemon, and the small potatoes she called one bite hopes. I salt like she taught me, ear height, slow rain. The fennel falls in crescents. The lemon oils the air. The house notices and loosens one notch in the belt. I brown the chicken until it admits color, then slide everything into the oven and set the timer to a number I can trust. While he does what he does, I make a list on the pad by the phone. Not a manifesto. A carpenter's cut sheet. Times. Places. Who spoke first? What was worn? Questions that sound like weather. Busy day? How's the team? Any plans this week? I leave blank lines after each because truth needs room to expand. I write record everything across the top, then draw a box around it I will not color in. Her car comes home with a modest engine note like it's trying not to be overheard. I flip the porch light even though the sun is still working. She steps in dressed as if the day demanded a little extra. New perfume, coastal and certain. I set plates. Nothing fancy, the good enough china that forgives a fork's impatience, and I pour water with lemon because wine tells lies you have to remember. She smiles at the smell from the oven. I match it with the one I practiced until it doesn't feel borrowed. How was it? I ask, the question so harmless it could pass a background check. Busy, she says. Meetings, then traffic. She slides her phone face down on the counter, a gesture that used to mean manners and now means something else. I nod, the way you nod to a neighbor's dog. At the table, we talk about small things on purpose. The neighbor's new roof. The basil that won't admit winter. The way the news won't stop being a siren. She reaches for salt, and I notice her nails are fresh, a color I haven't learned. I ask about her sister. She says they should plan another brunch. I ask about the contractor on the lobby remodel. She says he's younger than his confidence. In my head, I set each sentence on a sawhorse and check it for plumb. When she laughs, it lands half a second late, like a dubbed film. I mark that, too, only in the quiet ledger behind my eyes. When her hand brushes mine reaching for the bread, I clock the trimmer and file it under weather, crosswind. After dinner, I wash dishes I don't need to wash yet. She leans on the doorframe with a posture I've loved since the year we couldn't afford curtains. You okay? She asks, and it's almost kind. Just tired, I answer truthfully. tired as wood that has carried too many winters without complaining. When the house is dark enough that the oak's rasp sounds like ocean, I sit at the table with a pad and fill in the blanks. La Paloma. 2 o'clock. Blue dress. Sandals in November because the day pretended summer. His hand low at her back. Phone face down twice. Laughter half a beat late. New perfume. I don't write the word betrayal. It's a headline. Headlines don't help you build. The timer I forgot to cancel blinks midnight like it wants a verdict. I switch it off. Tomorrow, the bank. The files. The quiet work of measuring twice. Tonight, I practice the only smile I can keep without nails. I clean the knife, dry it, and put it back where it belongs. Some things, even now, answer when you set them down true. Silence does its work in small, professional ways. The first morning it brings a scent I don't own. Not flowers. Not spice. Ocean, if the ocean came in a bottle with a French name. It lives in the seams of the pillowcases, and in the hollow where her shoulder sleeps. I don't touch the sheet. I memorize the tide line, and make the bed as if creases were evidence. At breakfast, her phone learns a new trick. It used to light up when the room did. Now it keeps its face to itself, and asks for a passcode I've never met. For taps, a breath, then the quick tuck into a pocket the way you hide a flame from wind. I pour coffee, and stir the quiet until it stops pretending to be thick. Big day? I ask the countertop. Always, she says, and the word lands with its coat on. Receipts become shy. One night there are two on the desk, a gas station and the hardware store, the usual hymn. By morning the stack has lost pages, like a book a child thought was too long. The next day new paper appears with edges too neat. The amounts line up like soldiers. The ink is fresh, but the story is old. I don't reach for the trash. I open the drawer where we've kept our years, and slide them in beside warranties, and take out menus. Paper can keep a secret better than people. The house learns to listen with me. The oak rubs the siding, a slow file on a soft metal. The clock in the hall ticks evenly, a metronome refusing to choose a side. On the breadboard, the groove from the year of tomatoes looks deeper, as if memory could erode wood. I move through rooms like a man counting studs behind drywall. Knock, pause, note. Knock, pause, note. You don't argue with walls. You map them. On Wednesday, she wears the new perfume to water the plants. Roses smell confused by the competition. She hums a tune from the radio we don't play in this house, a song that thinks it's summer. I wipe the sink until the steel stops showing me a bit man. In the mirror over the stove, I test my face and it holds. The passcode pattern reveals itself the way traffic lights do when you stop trying to guess. 1, 2, pause, 1. Not numbers, just rhythm. I don't ask for it. Questions are tools that can strip a screw if you grab them too fast. Instead I count. Times she turns her shoulder to the wall to read a message, times her smile shows up late, times the phone sleeps under a napkin and calls it manners. At night I fold laundry with a care I didn't earn, sleeves aligned, socks paired like witnesses. The ocean in a bottle follows me from hamper to drawer, a tide that refuses ebb. I write nothing down because the pad already knows too much. I place my palm flat on the table and feel the grain line up under bone. Count, don't confront. Measure twice, don't cut until the line is sure. When she asks if I'll be home late Thursday, I say I might, and her relief is a door I could walk through. I stay anyway. I sit on the porch until the air goes thin and honest. The oak keeps speaking in its old rasp. Inside, the bed waits, remade to the corners, the new set anchored where it wants to live. I lay down as if weight were proof, and breathe as if counting were prayer. Sunday puts on its clean shirt and pretends it isn't tired. I set 4 plates like cardinal points and line the forks the way she taught me, tines marching, napkins folded to look undecided. The roast has behaved. The carrots haven't dissolved into apology. I hear their car doors in sequence, my daughter first, then the man who married her and borrowed our last name at the end of his. They come in with weather on their faces. My daughter's smile is a brave thing with skin knees. My son-in-law's is overconfident by a degree, the way a chair wobbles, and pretends it chose to. My wife arrives behind them from the kitchen, carrying a platter as if hunger were something she could solve by arrangement. She puts charm on the table like a vase of daisies, easy, bright, innocent by design. We make the small talk you can set a clock by. Work was work. Traffic was itself. The game last night convinced no one. My wife pours wine like forgiveness, her wrist sure, bottle tilted at just the right angle to avoid the drip. She touches the back of my daughter's chair in a move that reads maternal in photographs. Across the table, my son-in-law's glance lifts and passes through the light, quick as a moth. It meets hers for half a second, then folds itself away. Contraband, exchanged. The room pretends not to notice. I serve the roast while they serve an alibi. My daughter reaches for salt, and her hand bumps his. She pulls back like a person who has learned to apologize on reflex. He laughs a little too loudly at something about the neighbor's hedge and checks his phone without checking his phone. My wife asks him about the new project at his office. He answers to her voice, not the question. Under the lampshade, a second conversation runs silent and fluent. When my daughter tells a story about her boss mixing up 2 files and sending a budget to the wrong client, everyone laughs, myself included. In the air left after the laughter, my wife says, "Oh dear," in the tone she reserves for messes she already cleaned up. My son-in-law looks up as if saluted by a private memory. The glance that follows could pass for gratitude if gratitude had collarbones. Bread goes around like a truth no one wants to hold first. My daughter passes it to her husband with a practiced grace that still believes in practice. He tears off a piece, and his thumb finds the seam of the crust the way a man tests a fence. She watches the motion, a small grief in her eyes that she hides by drinking. I catalog that and nod at something about the basil surviving the cold, as if winter were a rumor we could vote against. My wife keeps the room's temperature with her laugh, precise and even. She asks me if I remembered to call the plumber about the upstairs sink, as if we were the same story we've always told. I say I did and watch my son-in-law's jaw work like a hinge that resents the door it holds. He praises the roast with a flourish, and she receives it with a smile that lands a beat late. The delay is the length of a hallway no one is allowed to walk in. Plates empty in honest ways. The clock in the hall refuses to hurry. Under the table, someone's foot taps a rhythm not meant for dinner. My daughter notices, and still chooses her next sentence with care, a woman stitching, while the fabric pulls under her thumbs. I refill her glass with water, not wine, and she thanks me as if I'd reached farther. When dessert appears, her pie from last summer thawed back into sweetness, my wife sets it down with ceremony and turns the knife toward me. The office is close enough to walk if I wanted the air to judge me. 3 streets from our life, above a bakery that smells like decisions made too early in the morning. Her door says Chin and Walsh in letters that don't flirt. Inside, the rug is the color of wet sand, and the chairs are honest about being chairs. She offers coffee I don't need and water I take because water never asks questions you can't answer. "Tell me what you have," she says, pen quiet in her hand. I set the folder down like a toolbox. House. Accounts. The small business that started in a garage and now has a roll-up door. Titles, statements, a deed with my grandmother's maiden name inked where history likes to live. I don't give her the story first. I give her the paper. She reads without sympathy, which is the only kindness I came for. Her finger tracks lines the way a carpenter runs a thumb along a fresh cut, testing for splinters. "Here," she says, tapping the deed. "See this rider? Your grandparents' trust reserved the property to bloodline. Occupancy by spouses, ownership by heirs. That's a clause that holds in storms." She says it like weather that has already checked the windows. We move to the accounts. "Joint where they should be, separate where it matters," she murmurs. "Conservative allocation. Whoever set this ladder likes sleeping at night." I nod. I have a picture of my grandfather at the kitchen table with a pencil, making numbers behave without raising his voice. "And the business?" she asks. I slide over the articles of organization, the assignment from 3 years ago, the line that names me successor if the first name can't or won't. She sits back. "That transfer into the family trust is clean. It keeps the shop out of a public hallway. If somebody tries to tug it through divorce, the document tugs back." I tell her as little as I can about perfume and glances, enough to color the margins, not enough to turn this into a memoir. She nods once and pulls a thin binder from the shelf behind her. "Infidelity provisions," she says, as if we were ordering from a menu neither of us likes. Not common, but your trust has teeth. In the event of dissolution due to adultery, the innocent spouse retains use and control of trust corpus tied to residence and business assets. Translation: if you can show cause, you don't negotiate with thieves for your own front door. She flips another page. Successor authority: you're already the next signature on the business. Bank accounts with survivorship will ignore any drama that isn't notarized. The house deed: it listens only to the trust. She uncaps the pen and draws a small square on her legal pad. This is your perimeter. Inside, you decide. Outside, let the storm argue with the fence. What do I do now? I ask, and my voice sounds like it belongs to a person who uses levels and shims. Document. Don't confront, she says. Keep your routines ordinary. Change nothing until you change it on paper. If there are showings or movers, they don't happen without your signature, which they will not get. She slides me a checklist printed in the kind of font that never panics. Bring copies of everything home. Photograph rooms as they are. Put a lock on your patience and a hinge on your temper. We stand. The bakery below coughs up a tray of something sweet into the afternoon. She shakes my hand like a colleague, not a case. On the way out, the hall window holds a square of weather I can use. The sky is undecided. The clauses aren't. I tuck the checklist into my folder and feel the weight of paper that has learned how to be a wall. 3 streets later, the oak by our porch is rubbing the siding again. It sounds like a house that knows which nails were driven true. The trust lives in a blue binder that smells faintly of old ink and kitchen tables. My grandfather's name sits on the first page like a hand on his shoulder. The clauses are not romantic. They are joinery, mortise, tenon, a frame that doesn't brag. I read slowly, lips moving the way his must have when he wrote checks with a pencil first. Paper bones. You don't see them when the house is warm, but they hold the roof when the weather forgets its manners. Successor rights arrive without fanfare. If the first hand can't or won't, the next hand does. There's my name, not with trumpets, just in the calm alphabet that makes banks nod. The language doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't need to. It says who signs, who decides, where keys live when people forget themselves. I run a thumb along the edge of the page and feel the bite of the notary seal through 2 sheets. Metal translated into sentence. Halfway through, the clause I came looking for waits, like a lighthouse you think you imagined until it turns. Infidelity does not move property tied to bloodline. Spouses may dwell, heirs will own. Use persists with innocence. The words are dry as bread, and somehow they feed me anyway. I picture hands I trusted where they shouldn't have been, and the idea of our house sliding across a lawyer's desk like a plate at a diner. The clause puts its palm on the rim and says no. I don't cheer. I don't cry. I sit at the dining table and let the chair take the weight I've been carrying with my back. The oak outside rubs the siding, steady as a heartbeat that has learned to ignore alarms. In the kitchen, the refrigerator hums the bass line of a life that will continue to need milk and light bulbs. The trust sentences keep their faces straight. Silence with teeth. If someone tries the door, it will bite. I copy the important pages because paper doesn't believe in only children. 1 set goes in the small safe under the stairs with passports and a handful of cash that smells like drawer. Another set into the folder I carry like a tool belt. The originals I slip back into the blue binder and stand it on the shelf between cookbooks she bought for pictures and manuals we never read. It belongs there, one more thing that tells you how not to burn dinner or the house. When she comes home, I'm still at the table, a pencil behind my ear because that's what my hands remember when they don't know what to do. Good day? She asks, breezing by. Productive, I answer, which is true in the way roofs are true when they don't leak. Later in bed, I feel the new perfume still trying to make itself the weather. I look at the ceiling crack that runs from the fixture to the corner and think about load paths, how weight moves to ground when the frame is honest. The trust is that path. It doesn't care for gossip. It cares for gravity. If love wandered, the joists did not. If promises loosened, the bolts held. I close my eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I know which nails were driven all the way home. The office at the shop smells like pencil shavings and coffee that's been faithful too long. I switch on the lamp with a tinted shade, and the bulb warms the ledger like a small sun. The books haven't been closed, exactly, just left to drift. I pull them back to shore. Bank feeds first. Then invoices stacked like postcards no one meant to send. I sort by date, then by the sound they make when you tap them. Urgent paper has a snap. Passwords come next. I log in with the old ones that still pretend they're secrets and change them to phrases only a man with our breadboard could guess. I write each down on a card and slide it into the small tin where we used to keep spare screws. If you treat order like hardware, it behaves. The email account bursts with newsletters offering miracles. I unsubscribe like a person closing windows in a storm. Vendor statements, however, I open. Net 30 is not a poem, it's a promise. I circle the ones we owe and put a star by the ones who've been patient. Those get calls first. Tom knocks on the door jamb and steps in with his cap in his hands. He doesn't ask what's wrong, he offers what's needed. Got the Parker backsplash wrapped, he says. Sanding's next door. His eyes flick to the piles and then to my face. I give him a half nod that means we're building the plane in the air, but it's flying level. He exhales like a man set down a 2x6 he wasn't sure we could carry. I untangle the deliveries. Hinges that should have arrived last week are idling in a warehouse 2 towns over. A woman named Lila answers at the supplier, and we negotiate in polite increments. She finds a stray box. I find the patience to pick up instead of ship. The whiteboard gets a new spine. Dates that make sense, arrows that mean something. We stop pretending we can do 5 kitchens before Friday. We do one right, and the others wait their turn. Overdue payments need firm voices. I call Mr. Gleason about the remaining third on his laundry room. He apologizes in a winded way that tells me he's been running for more than this. We set a date, and an amount he can meet without eating beans all week. I email the reminder at once, so the promise is ink. When the call ends, I don't feel victorious. I feel square. By noon the draft has left the shop. You can feel it in the way the roll-up door hums instead of rattles. The saw sings in a key I know. The crew moves like a sentence with its commas in the right places. I bring the ledger to 0 for the day, not forever, and the 0 looks honest. On the drive home, I don't turn on the radio. The truck has its own song, a patient engine under a man who knows what's in the tin, and what's on the board, and which bills are promises with dates now. The oak will rub the siding when I get there. It can. The door is shut. Morning draws a chalk line down the center of the bathroom. On one side, tile that remembers every winter. On the other, a mirror that refuses to lie. I lean on the sink the way you lean on a sawhorse when the cut has to be true. The face that looks back has the mileage of a map and the stubbornness of a beam that never learned to bow. I take stock the way I take stock of lumber, sight down the length, look for twist, accept the knots that tell you the tree had a life before you did. Not victim. Not fool. The words land without fanfare and hold. I raise my chin and the man in the glass raises his, too, like 2 foremen agreeing without needing a handshake. I run water until it turns from apology to warm, splash once, and watch rivulets cut paths through stubble and sleep. My grandfather used to say a level isn't a promise. It's a question you ask the board. The mirror asks me back, square? I breathe, and the bubble centers. I think about studs. Where they run, 16 on center, hidden behind paint and photographs, and a calendar that forgot how to count kindly. Even when drywall lies, studs tell the truth if you know where to knock. I tap my chest, gentle as a man testing a wall for a shelf that has to hold. Hollow in places. Solid where it matters. I can hang weight here. Razor, cream, the slow work of turning a rough surface into something presentable. I shave like I'm planing a door that's been sticking since the weather changed. Short strokes, no hurry. Oak rubs the siding. Inside, the kettle cools. We sit with proof and tea and the decision to make no noise that would drown out what we already know. They arrive without being invited, momentum instead of manners. His car noses up to the curb like it owns verbs, and she strides ahead of him in a coat that says winter is a suggestion. The yard is clipped short, the kind of tidy that tries to make arguments smaller. My daughter parks halfway down the block and waits with her hands on the wheel, a witness who knows when not to enter the frame. He starts on the walk before his shoes stop moving. We need the keys, he says, as if need were a locksmith. The realtor wants to stage photos. We're wasting prime market days. Prime sounds like a cut of meat he thinks he deserves. He carries a clipboard to make the sentence taller. My wife steps in, voice set to conciliation that always asks someone else to pay. No one's trying to push you, she says to me, the way you talk to a horse you plan to sell. It's just practical. You'll be happier in the condo. Fewer stairs. Less to manage. We can handle the burden here. Burden is an interesting word to put where love has been living. I notice the neighbor's blinds breathing. The oak rubs the siding, soft and steady, and the house keeps its hands at its sides. I mailed notices. I say, calm as a level on a board. No showings. No movers. No access without me. He barks a laugh he didn't rehearse well. That's not how estates work, he says. Continuity. We talked about this. Your counsel will confirm. My counsel did, I answer, and take the blue binder from under my arm. The paper has weight, not drama. I turn to the page with the corner bent by a man who liked his corners to tell the truth. One paragraph, I say, and read before anyone else can speak it into mud. In the event of dissolution of marriage precipitated by adultery, I begin, the language dry as lumber. Residential property and business assets held in the Henderson Family Trust remain for the use and benefit of bloodline heirs and their designated successors. Occupancy by a spouse shall not confer ownership, transferability, or encumbrance rights. Successor authority shall vest in the named trustee upon incapacity, unwillingness, or unfitness of the first named. I could build a fence out of the silence that follows. He shifts his weight, and the clipboard drops a degree. My wife's face learns a new stillness, one I've only seen when she watches a storm decide whether to turn. You can't be serious, he says, but it sounds like a question he already knows the answer to. Deeds outlast feelings, I say. Trusts outlast plans not written in them. He tries another doorway. We'll contest. The word hangs there like a coat on air. Contest paper that was recorded before your urgency learned to walk? I flip the page and let the notary seal catch the light. You're free to hire everyone you can afford to lose with. My wife steps closer, the smell of the ocean in a bottle trying to make weather again. Think of what this does to the family, she says, as if the family were a shelf I've overloaded. I look past her to my daughter's car, to the shape of her waiting. I say. I'm thinking about what holds. He opens his mouth to argue physics with gravity. The wind lifts the top sheet of the clipboard. His carefully typed schedule flutters and slaps his knuckles. Plans collapse like wet cardboard, still technically boxes, no longer useful. He gathers the paper with the careful anger of a man saving face for an audience that didn't buy tickets. This isn't over, he manages, finding his executive voice in the trunk of the car. It is for today, I say, and slide the binder under my arm again. The keys in my pocket weigh what they've always weighed. Behind me, the deadbolt knows my hand and answers with its small, final click. The oak rubs the siding. The neighbor's blinds stop breathing. On the lawn where we've thrown summer parties and raked leaves into ridiculous piles, the air evens out. Access remembers its owner. The house believes me. The day after the lawn turned into a courtroom, a van with a magnet sign that said fast move parked across the street. Two men carried out his life like it had handles. Boxes marked kitchen that never saw a stove. A golf bag that still smelled like clubhouse air. The mattress went last, as if dignity were a thing you save for the top of the pile. He didn't look up at the house when he closed the truck door. He looked at his phone, where instructions spare you from the shape of your leaving. The address he gave the crew is a complex I know from the time we redid a lobby for a landlord who wanted marble that could lie about itself. Then walls, braid carpets, stairwells painted in a color named sand because beige would have admitted too much. That night, I pictured his footsteps echoing back at him, a metronome for a life without furniture yet. She took to the internet like it was a confessional with an audience and a tip jar. Irreconcilable differences, she typed in a paragraph that sounded borrowed. We remain committed to family. The photos were all light and laughter from other years. Comments accumulated like leaves in a corner. Some people brought brooms. Some brought gasoline. I didn't read them twice. I don't give strangers a vote on the architecture of my day. At home, routine put its hand on my shoulder. I swept the porch not because it needed it, but because the motion reminds the boards they're cared for. Pine needles, a receipt fragment from a pocket, one brass screw that must have rolled here during some other repair. The broom drew a neat line at the top step. The air smelled like rain making up its mind. Inside, I ordered lumber for 2 steady jobs and 1 small indulgence. Clear pine for a set of shelves I'd been promising the back bedroom since we painted it green. Lila at the yard answered on the second ring. "Delivery Friday?" she asked. "I'll pick up," I said. "Feels like a week for carrying my own weight." She laughed the way decent people do when they recognize someone trying to stand right. In the shop, we tightened the week. The whiteboard stopped pretending to be a battlefield and went back to being a calendar. Tom laid out rails and stiles like a man dealing honest cards. I cut, he sanded. Louis set hinges that swung true without squeal. We paused long enough for soup out of thermoses and then got back to it. Work that fits makes a sound you can sleep to. Evening came without asking for a speech. I watered the pansies in their clay pots the way she did, 2 on the left, 1 on the right, as if the steps had a favorite side. In the kitchen, I wiped the table with lemon oil until the moon rings from hard days softened back into the grain. The radio tried a cheerful song. I let it have the room for exactly 3 minutes and then gave it back. The phone lit up twice with numbers I know and don't owe. I faced it down like a cat and went on rinsing dishes. Later, my daughter texted a picture of leftover pasta and a thumbs up that felt like a hug someone put in a mitten. I told her the shelves were finally happening. "Send progress pics," she wrote. I promised I would. Night found the bed smelling like laundry, not ocean. The house settled into its usual map. 1 stair that sighs, 1 vent that hums a country note, the oaks rasp like sandpaper on a soft edge. I laid down and didn't bargain with the ceiling. Sleep came without paperwork. When I woke at 2:11 out of habit, nothing new asked to be managed, so I went back under. In the morning, the porch was still clean, the orders still due, the world still held together by small mercies. A swept step, a cut square, a key that knows its owner, and a lock that answers with a quiet, faithful click. Winter puts its hand on the back of my neck and reminds me to move slower. Monday starts with numbers, not because the software can't add, but because a pencil makes the mind keep pace with the truth. I lay out the quarter in neat columns. What came in, what went out, what we promised and kept. The ledger's hum is low and honest. I circle 3 figures and write a word she used when the garden did what gardens do: steady. Vendor calls at 9. Lila at the yard answers on the second ring and doesn't make me explain why I want to pick up instead of wait. "Friday?" she asks. "Thursday," I say, because the weather is going to try something and would rides better before it does. Hinges from Rook arrive short by a box. I ask without heat, and they find it without attitude. We've all made mistakes that didn't need speeches. Bids go out slower and smaller. I stop pretending we can cathedral a kitchen with a broom closet's budget. Drawings get boxier. Timelines get realistic enough to sleep near. 2 weeks, not 1, I tell Mrs. Parker, and she sighs in relief because honesty is lighter to carry than hope dressed as a schedule. Tom sketches rails and stiles on graph paper like he's writing a love letter to right angles. Louis test fits a drawer until it kisses the face frame without complaint. The saw sings in a key I know, not triumphant, just on pitch. By Wednesday, the whiteboard looks like a crop plan. Sow tend, harvest, rest. It returns between lines. We stop bleeding into Saturdays. I bring in a box of donuts with a note taped to the lid. No heroics, just craft. The crew laughs and eats, and then gets back to making corners meet like they meant it. Afternoons belong to maintenance, the unglamorous work that keeps a shop from turning into a barn with ambitions. I oil the planer beds. Tom tunes the miter saw so the cut doesn't wander. We find 3 screws on the floor and put them where screws go instead of where luck can step on them. I change the batteries in the laser level and label the case, as if clarity could be stored and borrowed when needed. Home asks for a different kind of math. I open the drawer with the twine and the felt pads and the pencil stub that has outlived 3 shopping lists. Outside, the clay pots wait under the porch where summer left them. I knock last year out with a spoon, and the old soil falls like a story I don't need told again. Fresh mix, dark and crumbly, smells like decisions that won't embarrass you later. Winter pansies, purple with a yellow throat like a brave apology, go in one by one. I press the earth around each neck the way she did, firm but kind. 2 pots on the left step, one on the right, the house keeping the limp it likes. Inside, the dining table gets lemon oil, slow circles that bring the grain back from the dull weeks. The moon rings fade to suggestion. I print 2 pages from the shop and lay them side by side, income, expense, with notes in the margin that are more prayer than plan. Call Gleason. Confirm electrician. Buy salt. The kettle clicks off. Tea steam fogs the window and writes a ghost message on the glass. Keep going. Evening, I text my daughter a photo of the pansies standing their ground. She sends back a heart and a mitten and then, after a minute, just, proud of you. I set the phone face down the way people used to when manners were the reason. The house settles, not heavy, just sure. Winter can throw what it wants. The quarter is squared. The crew is steady. The clay remembers hands. The pots look like patience. And the key, when I hang it on its hook, makes that small faithful sound I listen for, the click that says, again tomorrow. The envelope is heavier than paper has any right to be. Not thick, just official, in that way ink can make a thing weigh more. My name is written carefully, as if each letter could break. Inside, his handwriting minding its manners. Therapy twice a week, a counselor with a soft last name, words like accountability and relapse prevention that sound like tools he's still learning to hold. He writes remorse without underlining it. He asks to meet where we won't be seen by anyone who wants a story more than a solution. The sentences stand in a row, no theatrics. I set the pages on the table and line them up with the grain. The phone pings. It's the sound the bank chose to impersonate a bird. I don't open it right away. I fill the kettle and let water find its reason. Steam announces itself, a white flag from the spout, and only then do I swipe. The transfer is there. First installment, the amount we agreed, the exact reference line I typed into the schedule. Repayment 1/24. It sits in the ledger with its chin up, not large enough to buy forgiveness, exactly the right size to buy proof. I breathe out without meaning to. Relief crosses the room and sits down without asking permission. Sorrow follows, slower, and chooses the same chair. They don't speak. They simply manage to fit. I carry both to the porch with my mug and the letter. Winter has sanded the sky to a flat gray, the kind that doesn't take sides. Across the street, Mrs. Parker knocks ice off her hydrangea with the back of a rake. The oak rubs the siding behind me, the old rasp that never needed lyrics. I read the letter again. He doesn't explain so much as account, where he was when he wasn't where he should have been, what he told himself to make leaving feel like a plan instead of a theft. He writes my daughter's name 3 times and then once more, like a man measuring before he cuts. He says he is sorry without asking me to do anything with the word, but here it land. Inside, the shop papers wait, a small stack of receipts clipped square, 2 estimates signed in blue ink that will hold. I set the letter beside them, not as evidence against him, but as part of the ledger of the week. Tom will ask, with his eyes, how it went, and I'll answer, with my head, that something small and necessary moved. In the afternoon I drive to the bank because paper likes stamps. The teller with the silver nail polish smiles the way people do when they recognize a man who keeps his appointments with arithmetic. "Anything else today?" she asks. I almost say grace and think better of it. "No," I say. "That's all." At home, I put a second chair at the kitchen table because it felt crowded with just one feeling doing all the work. I set 2 cups out, pour tea into one and water into the other, like I'm hosting a summit no one will see. The phone vibrates once. A calendar reminder I wrote on a stronger day. Plant new herbs when the frost gives up. I write back to him on paper, not a screen. I don't bless or condemn. I confirm the time and the place, a booth at a diner that smells like coffee and bacon fat and truths people can manage. I add one sentence that feels like a stud behind drywall. Keep the payments automatic. We'll let the rest arrive at the speed of proof. When the kettle cools, I carry both cups to the sink. The tea leaves a ring. The water doesn't. Sorrow and relief stand up from the same chair, leave their imprint in the cushion, and step back a pace to give the room its air. The house, undecorated by drama, keeps breathing like something built to last. The date arrives like a steady knock, no surprise, just presence. I spend the morning in the small work most days are built from. Lemon oil on the table until the grain lifts and darkens. Forks lined with their backs straight. Plates I've learned to set without thinking about who taught me. Her teacup goes to the head of the table, porcelain thin enough to remember every mouth it ever met. Not a shrine. A promise that what was good can sit with what is. The crew comes first, smelling of cedar and hand soap. Tom brings a loaf still warm, and apologizes to the bread for slicing it. Louise has a pie his sister made and a laugh that finds the corners. The neighbors arrive with casseroles and dishes older than our street. Jackets on hooks. Boots left where the mat knows how to hold them. The talk starts where talk always should, how the week went, and whether the cold is planning something unhelpful. We eat a meal that didn't need to be perfect to be true. The roast is honest. The salad forgives me. Someone spills, and someone else reaches with a towel without making the moment larger than a napkin. The room finds its hum, the pitch a house makes when weight is distributed and nothing is taking more than it can carry. After the second pass of bread, and the first story about a cabinet that refused to be square until it learned its manners, I stand without asking for silence. It arrives anyway. I keep one hand on the chair back like a man steadying a ladder. A year, I say, and the words do their job without decorations. Thank you for keeping me busy enough to sleep. There is a low chorus that sounds like agreement and soup. I lit the paper I folded into my pocket earlier, the one line I wrote for myself in the morning light, when the kettle clicked and the oak rubbed its old sentence along the siding. I read it the way you read an address when you've already arrived. I'm staying. This is home. No one claps. They nod like men who have checked a wall and found studs where studs belong. Tom knocks the table lightly with his knuckles, the way carpenters bless wood. Louise grins and points at the teacup, as if to say even porcelain knows. We trade dishes for dishwater, stories for the sound plates make when they decide to be clean. The neighbors argue cheerfully about whether the daffodils will be early. Someone finds the old radio station that plays songs from years that don't embarrass themselves. I catch my daughter's text between towels, a photo of her and the dog on a couch, a caption that says proud of you in fewer letters. I write back a picture of the teacup and the loaf's heel and the word here. When the door closes behind the last guest, the house doesn't feel empty. It feels cured. Heat purls along the baseboards. The table holds the soft rings of glasses, and used like metals. I set the teacup in the rack to dry where air can finish what water started. 2 pansies still hold on in the clay pots outside, purple faces daring the cold to argue. I turn off the light in the hall, and listen to the clock spend a minute exactly as intended. I take one more slow walk through the rooms. The blue binder on the shelf looks like any other book now. The keys on the hook shine because hands have reminded them. The bed smells like laundry and sleep. At the doorway, I look back at the table with the chair at its head and feel the sentence land a second time, heavier and better. I'm staying. This is home. The house hears me and, in the way of good structures, answers by continuing to stand.